over the world, people live in various different climates and types of housing. But some people have truly embraced living conditions that are unlike anyone else. Today, we're going to see a mouse that moves by itself, a house that's floated away 7 times, and a group of artists who secretly lived inside a large business for years. Hold on tight, subscribe to the channel, and let's take a closer look at the 10 strangest places where people actually live. Number 10. Shoe Home. Many of us probably grew up hearing the nursery rhyme about the old woman who lived in a shoe. The original rhyme recounts a tape of poverty and child abuse. It's really pretty grim, but certainly nobody lives in a shoe, right? Well, you might be surprised, and while you may think that it is astoundingly rare at best, somehow it's not. There are actually numerous giant shoe-shaped houses in the world, and in turn, numerous people living in shoe-shaped houses. While many shoe houses were built as and remain private residences, the Haynes Shoe House in Hallam, Pennsylvania was originally conceived as a form of advertisement for a shoe salesman, Mahone Haynes, in 1948. The house is 5 stories tall and fully inhabitable. Despite this, it was never lived in for long, instead being rented out to vacationing couples starting in 1950. Eventually, the house became an ice cream parlor before falling into disrepair by around 1982. 5 years later, Mellon's granddaughter restored it, and since then, there have been periodically tours available of the unique home. These shoe houses might be odd, but they are nothing compared to our number 1 entry, a man who practically lives inside a weapon of mass destruction. Number 9. Airplane Sweet Airplane. Most people try to spend limited time on airplanes, from airline food to flight delays. The majority of people consider it a pretty unpleasant experience. But Bruce Campbell decided to spend the rest of his life on an airplane. 68-year-old Bruce Campbell, a former industrial recycler, spent $100,000 in 1999 to buy a decommissioned Boeing 727, and an additional $120,000 to modify it. The result was fully livable, 1,066 square foot space that is now Bruce's full-time home. So it stands to reason that he faced some issues in dropping a commercial airline slash house into the middle of the city. Instead, this unique home is located in a wooded area outside of Portland, Oregon in the USA. Currently, Bruce splits his time between the jetliner home and Japan, where he tends to build a second fuselage home in the near future. Before we go on, like this video, pop the subscribe button, and ring the notification bell right now, or the ghost in your closet will manifest itself tonight. Number 8. Via Gerosol, Verona. Perhaps one of the best things about eating in a revolving restaurant is that eventually you get to leave. If you had to live your entire life spinning, you probably wouldn't enjoy it so much. But in fact, that is exactly how Angelo Invernizzi decided to live his life. Angelo was an Italian architect who envisioned a house that would follow the sun in the same way as a sunflower, rotating throughout the day to give each room an equal share of sunlight and shade. In 1929, he began drawing plans for a house like this, and in 1935, Via Gerosol was completed. The one-of-a-kind 5,000 cubic meter 2-story house was built atop a 44-meter circular base and rotates around a 42-meter tall tower at its center. Rotation occurs with the help of 3 tracks and 15 trolleys that move the house at a speed of 4 millimeters per second, and it takes a full 9 hours and 20 minutes for the building to make a full rotation. Number 7. Mallrats. For over 4 years, Michael Townsend and a group of other artists lived in all places inside a mall. Now the group obviously didn't just squat at a Banana Republic for nearly half a decade. So how exactly did they do it? The group of 8 artists, known as Tremorkind, gradually snuck over 2 tons of construction materials and furnishings into a previously unassessed space in the mall to create a fully furnished 750 square foot studio apartment. Large portions of life in the apartment were filmed as part of an experimental art project called Mall Life. When the group was eventually discovered, Michael Townsend, as the leader of the group, was sentenced to 6 months probation following a plea of no contest to a criminal charge of trespassing. Number 6. River House. Drina River House may be one of the most physically isolated houses on today's list. It is literally a house on a rock in the middle of a river in Serbia. So how and why could such a thing exist? As it turns out, Drina River is a popular spot with swimmers, although many find the stretch from one side to the other to be a long distance without a break. This led to the rock becoming a natural resting point for local swimmers. One problem with this, however, was that during the summer, the rock would get extremely hot. This prompted locals to put a board across it to rest on. Eventually, someone built a shelter to ride out rainstorms. One by one, people added onto it until it became a respectable little cabin. Unfortunately, it has been known to wash upstream a few times, but it is now on its 7th iteration, and there's no sign that locals and community groups are going to let the tradition die anytime soon. Number 5. Mount Fanging. Mount Fanging is located in Tongren, Guizhou Province, and is the highest peak of the Wuling Mountains in southwestern China at an elevation of 8,430 feet. Mount Fanging is considered a sacred mountain of Chinese Buddhism, in a location where it is impossible to reach true enlightenment. Because of this, the mountain's cloud coverage peak is home to the last surviving Buddhist temple built between 1368 and 1644. Images of this place just resonate tranquility. Number 4. Caveman. In 2004, Roy Michael Moore made headlines when he was evicted from his home, but he wasn't evicted for unpaid rent or having pets. Instead, he was evicted because he was living in a cave at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. The laboratory is home to an assortment of important scientific research pertaining to national security, space exploration, nuclear fusion, renewable energy, medicine, nanotechnology, and supercomputing. So how does someone just live there without anyone knowing? Pretty easy, apparently. No one knows exactly how long he was there, but the 56-year-old man had built an impressive home and by all accounts was trespassing, but not exactly homeless. The cave was protected by a sliding glass door sealed in with expanding foam insulation, a wood stove, a bed, and through the use of solar panels with batteries to store the power, he was able to run lights. A lot of lights. One of the many hobbies Roy had taken up while living in the cave was gardening. More accurately, growing marijuana. It's worth noting here that while he did have a long beard, he was anything but unkempt, and authorities said no one would have ever taken him for a guy who lived in a cave. So how did they find him secretly living his best life behind a top-secret nuclear weapons research facility? Because a maintenance worker caught sight of smoke from his wood-burning stove. While he probably could have been charged a wide variety of things, authorities said he was, quote, a very cordial man, and in the end, he was charged with misdemeanor and charges of possession in a controlled substance and possession of drug paraphernalia. Number 3. Staying afloat in Lepus. As a species, most human beings typically spend most of their lives on land. But for the Sama Bajo people, many families haven't lived on land in over 1,000 years. Instead, they live afloat on modern boats called lipas, where they form flotillas based on families. When a couple marry, they may choose whether to float with the bride or the groom's family. So some things seem painfully obvious, like where you might go to the washroom. But other things, like fishing, present a different scenario for these people who, compared to the mainland, are still a rather primitive nomadic water tribe. Over thousands of years without a generation on land, the Sama Bajo have evolved physical differences that have made them the world's greatest fishermen with the greatest daily apnea diving time reported in humans. In short, members of the Sama Bajo tribe spend over 5 hours a day submerged underwater, and many internationally rupture their eardrums at an early age to facilitate diving and hunting at sea. A 2018 study also found that the Sama Bajo had 50% larger spleens. While the benefits of this may not seem immediately apparent, this adaptation allows them to spend significantly longer underwater than the average person. When most people would begin suffocating and the body began to starve for hemoglobin-rich blood, the larger spleen is able to release a secondary dose of nutrient-rich blood to increase the body's physical ability to withstand the extended periods without air. Where the Sama Bajo live is impressive, but the adaptations they've made to do so are equally incredible. Number 2. Hovercraft. Built in 1984, this odd-looking home sits in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and is the vision of a man named Bart Prince. If you haven't guessed, Bart created this house to mimic a hovercraft. One of the biggest questions might be why, but things get even stranger when you learn that this home was built in the middle of a pre-existing residential neighborhood, not on any acreage like many of the odd homes we've seen, meaning all the home around him are what you would consider normal. But not this place. The lower level features a studio and workspace, and the landscaping and architecture puts an emphasis on silence and privacy. Number 1. Missile silo. Yes, a missile silo. Luckily, it won't be launching anything anytime soon, but it really doesn't make this home any less strange, just a bit safer. As it turns out, you too could live in a missile silo if you have the money and know the right people. The house we are looking at today actually isn't the first decommissioned missile silo in the US government has sold to a private buyer. Apparently, the silos are actually a pretty reasonable price, being only around $100,000. But the bigger issue is converting the silo into anything usable. That process may cost upwards of $1 million. But money didn't stop Bruce Townsley, a former social worker from Chicago who bought an abandoned Atlas F silo in Texas. Bruce converted the top floors of the 185-foot deep silo into a high-class bachelor pad, and he is currently working his way down, hoping to restore the lower levels of the silo to replicate the original design. That's all for 10 strangest places where people actually live. Which one was your favorite? Have you heard of other amazing places? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to TrendJoint for more incredible videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.